I'm just gonna say it, pretty privilege is real.
There are two worlds, okay? There's the common people world, and then there's the hot people world.
For starters, people are just so much nicer to you. When you weren't attractive, it was like everything you did was like annoying. Like your presence just like pissed people off.
And I had a mini eyebrow lift, and I had lip injection.
And everyone is finally starting to talk about it. And I've just got to chime in on this one. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my commentary series. You guys really liked the last one about the loneliness epidemic. So this is one I've been wanting to do for a very long time about pretty privilege, this idea of pretty privilege, and the rise of plastic surgery. I've actually been researching this for a while because I want to make a documentary style video about it. I've interviewed some plastic surgeons, some nurse injectors, and just looked at a lot of studies about this. First thing that we've just got to address, pretty privilege is for sure a thing. I feel like a lot of people have kind of subconsciously known this, but now there are actual studies on it. The people who speak on it the best are people who have had a glow up. Just listen to what they have to say.
For starters, people are just so much nicer to you. It's not even that they were overly rude to you before, but you were so used to not getting positive attention that now that you're consistently getting it, you're like, oh my god, what's going on? Why is everyone so nice? All the things you used to like that made you weird suddenly make you even more attractive. When you weren't attractive, it was like everything you did was like annoying. You asked a question, you were the biggest like irritation of life. But when you're like stereotypically attractive, like whatever, you get away with so much more. People are so much nicer to you.
It does affect so many parts of your life. Your dating pool is going to be very different depending on how you look, and the amount of money you end up making can even be impacted. Random strangers even can treat you differently based on how you look. Let's be real, it's not fair, but it's the reality. Let's talk about the money part of this. On average, more beautiful people are going to make $230,000 more in their lifetime than people with average looks, although I would argue that this is going to vary greatly depending on your job. There are studies that you're more likely to get even just hired based on your looks. If you have a client-facing job, that can be very beneficial. Even if you're just a bartender or working in a restaurant, the tips are higher for people that are more attractive. Certain jobs, it's like an unsaid thing where you're required to be like pretty. Think about The Devil Wears Prada. They're hiring a certain type of person. Even Glossier, that company, there was this tell-all book that came out called Glossy, and the writer talks about how they talked to people that worked there, and it was like an unsaid thing. They would hire people that were conventionally attractive. In the book, this really stuck out to me when I read this. They said it was okay to be chubby if you dressed well.
I'm editing this now, and I found the clip from the book. You guys listen.
She was unconsciously replicating Condé Nast. Your skin could be imperfect if you were beautiful and it translated to relatability online. You could be chubby if you had a gorgeous face and dressed well.
It's pretty messed up. There are jobs where your looks can help, like if you're a model or an actor or even an influencer. But even people in pharmaceutical sales, I've heard, is notorious for hiring more beautiful people that can sell those products a little bit better. But really, any job, because of what's called the halo effect. So let's talk about the halo effect, because this was like a groundbreaking thing in figuring out pretty privilege. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this. Essentially, it's a cognitive bias where we associate conventionally attractive people with good traits. What they found, this is on Cambridge.org, attractive people are often perceived as friendlier, healthier, more intelligent, competent, generous, and trustworthy. I mean, that's a lot of traits that honestly have nothing to do with how you look. I could see healthiness perhaps, but competency and intelligence really doesn't have anything to do with how you look. But there is a cognitive bias that's been proven in these studies. One of the studies, they basically took random people and showed them these yearbook photos. And the people that were more conventionally attractive, these random people described them as more socially desirable. They assumed that they lived happier lives. They actually assumed that they got married earlier and probably had happier marriages. And I think all of this just is affirming to what we all already know. Just going through life, obviously we see it. Like, this is no shock to anyone, I'm sure. Another thing I want to talk about is a newer phenomenon that I've seen online, and that is lucky girl syndrome. This is basically this idea that if you tell yourself you're a lucky girl and you just like believe that you're lucky, then lucky things will happen to you. And I do think there is some truth to that if you're being positive and seeing opportunities and like believing that you deserve those opportunities, you're going to be more likely to go for them and such. But I've seen some TikToks where it's like, no, That was just pretty privilege, actually.
Do any of you guys get annoyed when you see a TikTok by an influencer that talks about how they manifested their dream job or $1 million in a month or their dream partner, and then you look at the influencer and they're like a really attractive person? I find that really annoying because I always roll my eyes when I see that shit. They always say like, oh, it's a law of attraction, the law of abundance. But what I want to see is I want to see someone that manifested that shit, but I want them to be like butt-ass ugly.
I just feel like I always see the people that are talking about lucky girl syndrome are conventionally attractive. And that is a part of pretty privilege. It's not just how much money that you make, but you can get random opportunities. One example of this is reality TV. Think of people cast for The Bachelor, Love Island. They're not casting ugly people. And by going on the shows, you can get a bunch of followers. And a lot of people that go on these shows end up making a career out of social media after it. But you'll get random opportunities. People are just generally nicer to you. You might get random stuff for free.
There are a handful of apps that give models and influencers free food, drinks, anything. So this one is called Beauty Pass. It gives you free coffee, lunch, etc. just for posting a story and tagging the business. The third app I have is a little different. This one's called OTH, meaning on the house. Each influencer gets a weekly balance to spend at these businesses in exchange for 2 stories.
This app reminds me of the nosedive episode in Black Mirror, where more attractive people get better apartments for less cost.
A little more than expected. There's options. You know our Prime Influencers program? Do I qualify for that? No, you don't. We'd need you around a 4 or 5.
I know this is an episode of a fictional show, but it's not far off from real life. I've actually been offered an apartment for like an 80% discount if I were to post about it. I didn't end up doing it. There is an influencer benefit, and it's obviously way easier for people to become influencers, especially on TikTok if you're pretty. I also noticed it when I had platinum blonde hair. This was my own little social experiment, you guys. The amount of free drinks I got when I had platinum blonde hair. If I went to a bar when I had platinum blonde hair, I got a lot more male attention. I think that the platinum hair wasn't even the most flattering. It's so obviously fake looking in my opinion. You're also gonna have way higher chances of being successful as an influencer if you're conventionally attractive, especially on TikTok. A lot of the people that blow up on TikTok, their niche, their whole shtick just is being beautiful.
And there's just no turning back when your heart's under attack.
Imagine making a video of yourself lip syncing in your bathroom, just wearing, a nice dress, nice makeup, and it gets over 1 million views.
On these platforms, if you're trying to be a content creator, you have to provide value in some way. And I'm not kidding. Being beautiful is one of those ways. People are just fascinated by it. You can do kind of regular stuff, but if you're doing it whilst being very beautiful, people actually watch it. The 2 examples I think of here are, and no shade to these creators at all, but Alex Earl and Addison Rae. Alex Earl actually is like a pretty normal college girl, at least from when she blew up. But the whole shtick really was that she was like really pretty, but down to earth. Like she would just do regular stuff, like going out, partying, like a normal college girl.
We're hosting the last pregame at our college house. All of our girlfriends and our guy friends are coming over, and then we're gonna hop around to a bunch of different bars.
There are a lot of people who just live that same lifestyle and make content about it. And again, no shade, like she seems like a nice girl, but I do think that is a part of it. And guys totally benefit from this too. You can get away with just doing like a little lip sync video or check yourself out in the camera, show your outfit, and people like it if you look good. But if you were, quote, ugly, it would be considered cringe. On TikTok, it's definitely more of a thing, like your looks play more of a part than on something like YouTube. People get to know you more, you can provide value in other ways. I feel like I gotta be hustling to get B-roll and provide some value and like interview people and work so much harder just to get the views that someone who is like drop dead gorgeous will get just by doing a basic ass makeup routine, I'm really not trying to sound bitter, like I like making the type of content that I make, but like it's true. I think we can all recognize it's not totally fair, but it is life. It is the reality. But why are we like this? I've come to realize that part of it is kind of this like hardwiring as humans that we've evolved into. And part of it is societal reinforcements. A lot of it is just human nature, unfortunately. Evolutionary psychologists think some of it signals your health. So if you have a more symmetrical face, it might signify that you are healthier and your offspring are more likely to survive. So there was a study at the University of Exeter. They took 1-day-old babies. They showed them a conventionally attractive face and a not attractive face. They spent more time fixated on the more attractive face at 1 day old. And have you ever been around a little kid? Like, they're very honest.
And if you wonder if I hate you,
Yeah, they'll tell you if they think that you're pretty or not. Little kids, they pick up on it. I do think it is a biological thing, largely with the symmetry aspect of it, but it is societally reinforced as well. I mean, when we're young and we watch Disney movies, they make the princesses have small nose and big eyes, and then the ugly stepsisters look like this, reinforcing it from a young age. Not to mention, everywhere in the media, people tend to be above average looking. Even like back when Victoria's Secret models were the big thing, that was a really interesting one. Like, that was in our society like the pinnacle of beauty, like what every girl wanted to look like. But the funny thing is, even those models would say like it wasn't sustainable. Like, they were on these crazy diets.
I was 100% sure that there's no way they think looking like this is real.
When you look back at our old VS campaigns, it's like, obviously there's like retouching and like...
I would stand next to the big window billboards on the street, and I could stand there for like 30 minutes and not a single person could put the two people together.
No, I'm done.
And they thought it was really obvious, but like, no, people didn't know that. So I do think it is both biological, this cognitive bias that we just have kind of ingrained into us, but then it's really reinforced in society, like a lot. This pretty privilege is, I think, why we see such a rise in plastic surgery. Like, we do know there tend to be benefits to being conventionally attractive now, and people want in. They're like, if you can't beat them, join them. Plastic surgery is more common. I mean, plastic surgery is on the rise. A 2023 report found that cosmetic surgeries increased nearly 30% in 2021 compared to 2019 and nearly 50% compared to 2020. So a lot more cosmetic procedures going down. The top cosmetic procedures are rhinoplasty, blepharoplasty, so eyelids, facelift, breast augmentation, and liposuction, and BBLs. It didn't make the list, but that's definitely a popular one as well. And then for men, it's also rhinoplasty, blepharoplasty, cheek implant, liposuction, ear surgery, like pinning the ears back, and hair transplants, of course. That's probably like the biggest one for men. So one huge reason I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that I think plastic surgery is more common is we all look at ourselves way more than any generation ever has, especially once the pandemic hit and people were on Zoom calls. You know, you kind of see yourself all the time. Think about back in the 80s, people had film cameras and you would take some photos and get them developed. And let's be real, those film cameras, they're more flattering. They definitely are more forgiving than your iPhone selfie camera is not always super flattering. Obviously, social media is a big part of it. People take photos of themselves more to post on social media. They want to look good on social media. There's like that pressure too. And when I interviewed Dr. Modicki, who's a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, he agreed that social media plays a role. Do you think people are getting more things done with like the rise of social media?
Yes, 100% people are getting more things done with social media. People are spending a lot more time looking at themselves, but also looking at other people. Many times they're more exposed and educated to things, so they are aware of these things. Before, plastic surgery was kind of done in the, in the background, in the clouds, and nobody talked about it. Now everybody's talking about it. It's all over social media, and people are getting exposed to it at a younger age as well. People now growing up being exposed to it, so it's a lot less stigmata and a lot more exposure, so it's much more common due to social media.
The filters certainly do not help. You can so easily see now what you would look like with a nose job. I mean, this one is ridiculous. I don't look anything like this. And when you take it off, you feel like, whoa, I look worse, kind of. We're all looking at ourselves way more than we used to. And it causes you to notice things that you otherwise wouldn't, and maybe pick apart how you look when we just wouldn't have even realized it back in the day. And I think we're seeing ourselves really more than we should, but I don't think that is going to be changing anytime soon. I think also just people have always had insecurities that they wanted to change, but there was such a stigma around it, and there isn't really as much. I'm sure some of you guys remember back in 2009 when Heidi Montag, now Heidi Pratt, got all those surgeries. She got 10 surgeries in one day, and they raked her over the coals. They basically tried to cancel her for doing this. She was really the first person to be so open about it, and she walked so the Kardashians could run. Today, people are getting a lot of procedures done to their face and body, but they're not as scrutinized for it. There definitely is less of a stigma. I know like 5 of my friends who have gotten nose jobs, and like some of them posted on Instagram stories after, like with the little cast thing and all and everything. A lot of people get work done and just, you'll never know. A lot of celebrities too, and influencers. So it's always been happening. It's just people talk about it more, and it really is everywhere. You would think LA was the #1 place, but it's actually not. Miami is now the plastic surgery capital of the US. It's Miami, then Salt Lake City, and then LA. And really, if you drive around any random small town, you'll see plastic surgery offices. If they're in business, people are getting it done. It's happening everywhere, but people just aren't as loud about it if you live in a place where there might be more stigma about it. I do think Salt Lake City is pretty interesting that was one. The Daily Utah Chronicle, they posted this article about how Salt Lake City's Mormon culture encourages plastic surgery. See, this was something I had no idea about, but they do seem to care about their looks there. And let's talk about the actual plastic surgeries in general, because I don't judge anyone for wanting to get something done. If you are someone who was born with maybe a larger than average nose, I'll use as an example, I can see why you might want to get work done to that, because there are cases where people get bullied and it's right in the middle of your face, and it can have actually a huge impact on how you look. And the societal standards are real. Although it's a shallow thing, people are shallow and you're treated differently because of it. So I really don't blame people if they want to get something done. It's interesting to see these people who did get a nose job and were treated differently. This Reddit user said people smile and talk to her more. Her opinion is even more valued at work. The biggest thing is usually that people just are more confident after they fix that thing that was making them insecure. If you're insecure about it and it's going to make you more confident and just like solve that thing, I understand where they're coming from. This is just my opinion. With most people, if they have one thing they're insecure about and they do go forward with changing it, I do think it usually does enhance their beauty if it's just one little thing that they change.
I've literally seen it change people's lives. I've literally seen people come in that have not necessarily been bullied, but close to it, or no self-confidence, coming in head down, not wanting to go do things, not wanting to socialize, not wanting to pursue their dreams, to fixing 1 or 2 things and completely changing their life. And that's kind of the power of it. It's not that you are necessarily doing that, but you're giving them the ability to come out of their shell.
But at the same time, there are people who go too far with it. They get work done that's really not even necessary. And just because you get more procedures done doesn't mean you're necessarily going to look better. There are diminishing returns to cosmetic procedures. Most people, you might be able to get 1 or 2 things done. It might enhance how you look, but anything more than that actually just starts to make you look like everybody else and can take away the uniqueness of a lot of people's faces. And there also are the people that go overboard and it just makes you look worse than how you started off. And I noticed that we're kind of moving in a direction of the beauty standard being this kind of plastic look. And the Hollywood Reporter actually coined a term for it. It's called the alienized look. And I would characterize it as like really overfilled lips, pulled back eyes, a dramatic amount that just doesn't really look natural. And then usually like filler in the cheeks as well. A lot of times it'll be buccal fat removal. So getting rid of that fat there and gives people more of a narrow cheekbone look. I think this look goes too far. The fact that the beauty standard is more moving towards this and more people are looking like this, it just causes everyone to start to kind of look the same. I saw a TikTok of this actress who was very naturally pretty, and then she got this work done and she kind of has the alienized look now.
And I think why this one has such traction is because it's another case of so beautiful, why are you touching, you're so young, in your 20s, like why are you touching your face? People are sensing that like This is becoming bigger. It's no longer just a few Hollywood actresses, a few influencers, this and that. No, this is like more and more young women, especially.
It's just crazy because she already was pretty. She probably was benefiting from pretty privilege. I mean, she was a famous actress, so definitely she was. The standards have started to move in a way where she felt the need to look more like that. And I don't think she really needed to do anything. I don't want to judge or say anything mean about it. Let's be real, like she looks good in both cases, but I just don't think she needed to do anything. What's kind of crazy about plastic surgery now is there are trends and they're very much influenced by celebrities and influencers. Celebrities' impact on plastic surgery. I think they've inspired a lot of procedures. The one that really comes to mind is Miss Kylie Jenner. When Kylie Jenner got lip filler, it started a movement. I even got lip filler at one point. I have very naturally thin lips. The thing that we know now with filler is that it migrates. It doesn't actually dissolve like they say it does in 9 months. Dr. Gavin Chan was the first one I saw to make a YouTube video about his own research on this. He said he had clients coming in like 10 years later that still had filler in their face that hadn't dissolved. It doesn't. Okay, I had filler and I can tell you, I noticed it moving around. So I got it dissolved with hyaluronidase. I went to go see Jasmine, who has been a nurse practitioner and has 10 years of experience injecting. She also has quite a TikTok following. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, check out her TikTok. It was when I saw this photo of myself, that filler migration mustache look, that I was like, all right, I've got to get this shit dissolved. I'll spare you the footage of the needle actually going into my face, but what you need to know is it actually burns to get lip filler dissolved. It hurts more than getting it injected, and it makes your lips puff up like crazy. I had never seen myself look like this before, and it was pretty hilarious. So this definitely did the trick. It got rid of that filler migration. But since then, I've seen some stuff come out about hyaluronidase that it might not be great to use either. The problem with hyaluronidase, so that is a dissolving agent and it can dissolve some of your own collagen as well. So I would just personally recommend stay away from filler. It might look good the first couple times you get it, but if you're not regularly getting it dissolved in the long run, it's not a good look.
There is just something really, really crazy about living in the age of filler. I keep seeing commentary like this about Kylie and her fillers. I think it's important to note, Kylie started getting filler pretty young. She was a teenager. We've always been told that if filler doesn't sit well, if we don't like it, we can just dissolve it. But more and more we're beginning to see, even if you try to dissolve it, filler can still stay and migrate.
Altogether, I think it's kind of sketch, personally. I don't think I'll ever honestly get filler again. I think I can get the same effect with Botox, which works very differently. It doesn't migrate. Although I'm hesitant to recommend anything at all because we just don't know the long-term effects. But back to the trends. Brazilian butt lifts have been another big one in the last 5 years. This is honestly scary. The fact that there are different cosmetic procedures that become trendy and then the trend is out and people don't want to look like that anymore. There's speculation that the Kardashians are taking out their BBLs. I don't even know if that's possible to do, and whether they did it or not, the fact of the matter is we're seeing the body type trend changing. And I think we can all agree that body types being a trend is a very weird concept. It's crazy because you have to get a whole surgery to look like that. So a big one was BBLs. The Kardashians really made this popular. There's a lot of speculation. And then we saw a big surge in the amount of people that got BBLs, a 37% increase. And that's a very dangerous procedure, actually. They're injecting fat into your butt. And if it goes into the wrong spot, it can block your blood flow and you can die. Like, it's actually kind of risky. The crazy thing is now we're seeing that that's not as popular anymore. Now everyone's getting on Ozempic and getting really thin. It's just super weird that body types become trendy, and I think we really need to overcome the cognitive bias on that one. But this is not the only risky surgery. It does seem that plastic surgery on your body rather than your face has more risk to it. Also, boob jobs, people have had a lot of issues with. It was back in the 90s when people started to get kind of sick from their implants. So Allergan, the company that makes these, had to recall them. In the early 2000s, they aggressively lobbied for them to be considered safe again. The FDA eventually did consider them safe again, but a lot of people still have issues with them. If you look up breast implant illness, so many people get sick from them. Their body essentially rejects the implant. So here's a TikTok of someone's experience with breast implant illness.
This is what breast implant illness looks like for me. I frequently get dry, itchy, and inflamed eyes.
You don't need them. You're beautiful without them. They will make you sick.
It's crazy because like the medical industry is still not even fully recognizing this as a real illness when thousands of people get it every year. And the studies that are conducted on this illness are by the pharmaceutical companies. So can we really trust them?
The vast majority of these big studies are funded by implant companies, and they're performed by plastic surgeons who are paid sometimes millions of dollars by these implant companies to be spokespeople. And I started going to BII websites put up by women who believe they have BII. And I started looking at the articles that they posted. And I'm like, I haven't heard of this article. Why didn't somebody tell me about this? Because it was not in the plastic surgery literature. It was in the rheumatology literature.
There are certain things that they almost become the standard. If everyone's getting Botox, it's kind of jarring if you see someone who just ages naturally. And I would argue that these standards are moving in a direction where people are feeling the pressure to get procedures that are risky. I'm sure you guys have heard this idea that you're not ugly, you're just poor. To an extent, you can buy beauty, to an extent. And it reminds me of this book I read a long time ago called The Uglies. In this book, when you turned a certain age, you would undergo a procedure to be made beautiful, and then your life was really easy after that. Everyone underwent this procedure when you turned a certain age. It was like a rite of passage, and it's starting to feel like that is a thing in certain areas. Once you turn 18, people get veneers, they get a boob job, they get a nose job, they get all these things if they can afford it. On the one hand, I don't judge people for getting something done if they're insecure about it and it makes them more confident. But on the other hand, I hate that it's kind of become a standard, and it might become like really weird and unusual if you don't follow that standard. And the cost of these procedures are not cheap, and they're usually not one and done. It's very expensive, and these companies are profiting quite a bit from it. Veneers are like $10,000, and you have to get them redone every 10 years. If you're getting a boob job, that's, again, probably around $10,000, and you got to get it redone every 10 years. It's very pricey, and in a world where things are getting more and more expensive, to then feel like you need to keep up with this beauty standard too, that's just crazy. Like, let's talk about the companies that are profiting off of this. It's pharmaceutical companies, mostly, and plastic surgeons. Allergan is a really big one. They own Botox. They actually are the ones who make implants. They also own Juvederm, which is a filler brand. They're all owned by pharmaceutical companies, which are super corrupt, usually are lobbying for different things. I don't think they really have patients' wellness always in mind. Anyway, they're making a ton of money from this. Popping in here again while I'm editing to say that, like any industry, there's going to be some people who are money hungry, and I've experienced this firsthand. I went to get Botox in my forehead. It's the only place I get Botox. I honestly think it's fine. And this was not Jasmine from earlier in the video. This was just a place near me that was really convenient. But this injector was like, oh, have you thought about getting cheek filler too? Like, I think this is what you should do. And I was just like, no, I don't want that. And I know filler's sketchy, but you know there are people who would fall prey to that, become insecure about whatever they point out, and start getting it. Let's talk about men and the surgical procedures they're getting. I feel like the big one I hear about is hair transplants. Some notable people who have gotten it. Elon Musk. I mean, look at that before and after. David Beckham is rumored to have had a hair transplant, and I could see it. Hair really does make a big difference in how you look. Like, let's just acknowledge that. And so I can see why a lot of men are stressed about that and don't want to lose their hair. It really does have a big impact on how you look. So a lot of men are getting hair transplants. It's a pricey procedure. It's actually a pretty long and painful procedure. Apparently it can take 6 to 8 months to fully recover. The procedure can take 6 to 8 hours. Average cost in the US is around $10,000, but we're seeing that a lot of people are going to Turkey for this. People have posted online flights coming back from Turkey with bandaged heads. It's crazy. I'm not even gonna lie, you guys. I'm so sick of the societal standards being mostly on women that it's kind of nice that men have something to worry about too. You know, I think it makes them a little more empathetic, maybe. Although I don't want anyone to feel like they need to get work done. I want to end this with my overall thoughts on pretty privilege and plastic surgery. As you know, I definitely think that pretty privilege is a real thing. Like, I've been saying for years, you guys, like, I've been noticing this. I'm like, it's definitely real. And the rise of plastic surgery, I personally have mixed feelings about, because on the one hand, I do think it's great. And I have seen firsthand people in my life who have gotten one little thing done and there was no complications and it really wasn't a big deal and it improved their confidence. And it did seem to actually actually make their life better. And they weren't addicted to plastic surgery after. That was all they did, and they were done. So in that case, you know, if you have an insecurity and you can just take care of it in that way and never worry about it again, like, more power to you. But on the other hand, I really don't like the direction that things are going. I hate the alienized face and the fact that people are kind of looking more and more the same. I think that if you are going to get something done ever, like, you should just really limit it to 1 or 2 things. When you start changing, like, more than 5 things, then it goes from enhancing your own beauty to just looking like something totally different. I don't like the idea that our world might move in a direction where that's a standard. Someone turns 14 and they want to get a bunch of things done. Like, it feels like that book, The Uglies, is becoming real life. And honestly, I think that's scary. Okay, those are my thoughts on the whole thing. Let me know what you guys think, especially if you've had a cosmetic procedure done. How did it impact your life? And yeah, what do you think of the alienized face and all of that? Let me know, comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. My throat kind of hurts for talking for so long. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.